First fight on this card, Yazmin Jauregui. She's taking on Istela Nunes, a battle of strikers at strawweight. And for both of these women, again, second time out for the former UWC and then Combate tournament champion Jauregui. And in her UFC debut, listen, they didn't give out a fight of the night, but oh my gosh, her fight against Yazmin Lucindo. Let's start it here, because Jauregui was a decent favorite in that fight. She was around a minus 200 or a little bit more. I think it was minus 195, in about there. You look at that fight, and for Lucindo, she kind of looked like a Natalia Silva in that fight.
Little bit,
we did not expect the striking of Lucindo to look that good in that fight, and I never thought Natalia Silva was going to look as good as she has in the UFC. So when you look at that fight, Matt, when you look at Jauregui versus Lucindo, were there things you were able to gain out of rewatching that one, getting ready for this?
I was just really impressed by both fighters, and that has to be said. Like, I think that's one of those fights where both fighters do gain stock as the result. But for Jauregui, I do really like the volume that she demonstrated in that fight, and that's really going to be a key in this matchup against Nunes, because, let's be honest, there is not a lot of TKO stoppages in this strawweight division. There just isn't. Unless Jessica Andrade comes walking into that cage, because she is a legit threat, she can knock you out at 145. That is how dangerous that woman is. But down at this division, volume really is queen, I guess, if you want to say it that way. Like, think about Joanna. Even at the height of her powers, yes, she had a couple TKOs earlier on in her career, but that's really because she was able to outmatch some of those defenders. It was Jessica Penne, Carla Esparza, who early in their career weren't great strikers. For Jędrzejczyk, she was really able to wow them with her volume, and I think for Jauregui, that's how she's going to be able to at least win this fight. I'm not saying she is the next Jędrzejczyk by any means, but I really do think that volume is going to be able to carry her while she's facing these other primary strikers. Now, when she faces a primary wrestler who's really going to test her and just get into the clinch and dirty box a lot, that'll be a story for another day, but I do like Yazmin, at least with her stylistic matchup.
The thing that weirds me out about this fight, and I knew the comments were going to come in, and this is just kind of the nature of the beast doing the show live, so we're going to go through a few of them right here. So Cena is saying, can't believe Nunes fought Angela Lee. So that was over with one championship. She had won a couple of fights. Now, one thing. For Istela Nunes, her record coming into her last fight, it was 7-2 with a no contest. One of her fights was a Muay Thai fight. It was thrown out there on Twitter a few years ago. Finally, that's been corrected. So that's why it's now 6-3 at this point. She has been defeated in both of her UFC fights. She signed to the UFC a long time ago, had a 2-year USADA suspension due to stanozolol, and then made that debut after a few fights falling out. But when you do look at it, like MPTV says, Nunes has been underwhelming. Yazmin the opposite. I wonder what's going to happen. First Last saying, I feel like Nunes is very limited as a striker, especially her grappling. This really feels like Yazmin's fight to lose. Istela Nunes is definitely limited as a grappler. And inside of the UFC's Octagon, all of those camps have taken place at ATT. And some of the names that I threw down here for her that she trains with, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, you've got Ariane Lipski, you've got Marina Moroz, Jasmine Jazz Divisius, Maeda Bueno Silva. Like, you have some big names to train with at American Top Team. But for Nunes, she can defend some of those early takedown attempts because her movement's really good. She moves great side to side. She's really speedy. She switches stances, which is something that even on my graphic right here, it might not illustrate that because I have it as orthodox, but she will switch because when she goes southpaw, she throws that back foot as a left head kick quite a bit to really throw off her opponents. But Nunes has really good boxing and a lot of power on that back hand, that dominant hand. So whether it's southpaw, most likely orthodox, she'll throw out the left hook and then throw a straight right hand down the pipe, and she can damage her opponents. And if you go back and watch the Sam Hughes fight, great first round.
Oh, yeah.
Second round, pulls about even.
What do we say about Hughes, though?
Third round, Hughes took over, and Hughes gained a point because there was an eye poke from Nunes that was called. So if it was 29-27, if that's how he scored it, that's how that fight went. But for Istela Nunes, the trouble's been the cardio and the takedown defense inside the UFC's Octagon. Through both of those fights that she's had in the UFC. She did terrible in the second round against Hughes. It could have gone either way, but regardless, it was either a draw or a win for Hughes. And in that one, after the first round, they show the graphic on the screen, Nunes was a minus 1,000 favorite after round number 1. So I do kind of worry a bit about this fight when you do really look at it, because if you do look at Yazmin Jauregui, boxing really is her specialty. I don't really know how she could perform if she does have to fight from southpaw. But for Jauregui, really high and tight guard, a lot of volume with it. The one thing that scared me a little bit in that debut against Lucindo, who's very much one shot, one kill, power over anything. Daniel Cormier said this after a couple of good flurries. He said, she's very fast, she's very good, but she doesn't exit as quickly as she should. after she lands a combination, which is something that I started to notice just even in the regional scene fights. And for her, she won that Combate championship. She did have a couple of one-round fights. One went to a decision, so 5 minutes, decision.
Teddy Atlas calls that not waiting for the receipt.
The other fight, she ends up getting the finish, and then she wins the belt. But for Jauregui, for as good as her boxing is, her leg kicks really do play out quite well. 18 attempted in the first round of her last fight, 10 in the second round, 6 in the third round, and it's a big, big part of her game.
It is. I just think, and I kind of gave it away originally, I don't think Nunes' power is great enough to stop Yazmin in this matchup. So unless she is able to really start to damage her, that means get cuts, like start to swell up her eyes and such, I do think the volume of Yazmin is going to be overwhelming in this matchup, because that's the thing. If you're worried about your opponent throwing, and if you're trying to defend your opponent's shots, there's not going to be those openings for then you to land your own shots, and I think Nunes is going to struggle with that. Like, there has been nothing from Nunes' 2 first fights in the UFC for me to think, wow, now she's going to be able to all of a sudden benefit from the training at ATT and beat someone like Jauregui, who, again, she might not become a ranked fighter. I guess this isn't the deepest division in the world, and the way that the UFC seems to be promoting her, maybe she will find her way to the rankings sooner rather than later, but I think she has shown enough promise to be excited for her career moving forward.
So, I haven't looked at the odds, but we'll bring them up on Best Fight Odds. So this is the part where it seems like amateur hour, but when you're live, that's how it works. Jauregui open -240, -332, and if you look at Nunes, open +205, +255. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt, and this is live. So, listen, we're going to guess. You don't know them. We don't know them.
No idea.
I'm going to say over under 80% Jauregui in this one.
Probably over.
Probably over. Yeah, it's way over. 1,888 votes, 95% Jauregui, 67% by decision, 22% by knockout. For the 5% that have Nunes, 61% by decision. And it's weird to see somebody like Nunes go from a favor last time out against Sam Hughes, which could have gone the other way. I mean, again, third round and eye poke draw was the best thing that she could hope for. And in her fight against Carnelossi, decent first round, decent second round, third round, finally the takedown defense, she gets submitted. But if you do look at it for Nunes, like at a +225, it's kind of weird, but when I look at Jauregui, she kind of does remind me of her training partner out of Entram Gym, like a younger Silvana Gomez Juarez that's pieced it together. So for me, I have Jauregui, but it's ever so slightly. I'm surprised, like first, last over there in the comment section. Wow, at the 95%, that there's that many people going with Jauregui and that she's that big of a favorite. But I think, undefeated, little bit of a promotional push. I think Jauregui gets the win.
I like Yazmin in this matchup. I really do. I think her volume is going to be overwhelming.